morning, everybody. I hope this video finds you well. Today, I want to talk about a kind of an eclectic subject, and this has to do with intel, information, or maybe disinformation, but I'm going to talk a little bit about information. Now, any of you who are aware of MM and my background and all this, and my writings, you're probably aware that when you read Metallic Man, you go down some kind of crazy rabbit hole. But it's refreshing in that it is not the same bullshit that you see on other websites. It's really quite different, and that's because I try to keep it real. And while my background is very interesting, and I have great opinions and I have a lot of experience, it's unique. I can't tell you what it's like in Russia. I can't tell you what it's like in Bulgaria right now. I have no idea what's going on in Mexico right now. I can't tell you how to bake a blueberry pie. All right, there are things that I don't know, and so on those things, I shrug my shoulders and I say I don't know, and that's it. But then there's other subjects that I do know about, and so I talk about them, and primarily I know about my role in Majestic, and peripherally the scope of Majestic. And that's part of the O&I. I also do know a little bit about global politics as a participant, not as an analyst, which is something that's pretty significant, let me tell you. And with that in mind, I'm going to talk about reality versus disinformation. And in this case, I want to talk about reality. Not so much the reality of this world line and the reality universe. No, I want to talk about the reality that you're exposed to as a person. The reality of what's actually going on right now in the world around you. That's what we're going to talk about. Okay? So, in this case, I want to talk about the reality. Now, if you're reading, all you do is read mainstream American media, you will be under the impression that proud Ukrainians are fighting the dastardly, crazy, tyrannical, authoritative dictatorship known as Russia, but there are collapsing all over left and right, and soon the valiant, peaceful Ukrainians will win. You've also heard about the evil, blood-sucking Chinese that want your vital American fluids so that they can take over and rule you because they don't have enough men or enough women in their lives because of the one-child birth policy. These narratives are bullshit. They're completely fabricated nonsense, and if you believe them, you should be bitch slapping yourself. You need to be bitch slapping yourself, because that's not the reality. Now, if you watch or read what some of the things I have said, you will notice that one of the things I currently say is that we live in a artificially constructed media chamber, a media chamber that's artificial. The politicians aren't where you think they are. They make pronouncements in front of a green screen, and then audience and American flags and curtains and stuff are put on afterwards. So if you see President Biden and he's talking to reporters and points somebody out, that's a staged event. So basically, you know that if it's on Yahoo News or Fox or MSNBC or all of that's bullshit. They're just telling you one side of the story, and a lot of times they're making up events. So it's all fake. Like the other day, I read that the Ukrainians shot down a hypervelocity missile from China. Well, I read that and I was like, this is bullshit. Number one, the systems that the United States have cannot shoot that fast, and doesn't have the range either that these things go. And third of all, I was like, okay, so we've got some Ukrainian officials saying this and saying that, and then unknown experts saying this and that, with a lot of fluff in between, talking about how bad Russia is and how great Ukraine is, and all that fluff. And after you go through all the fluff there, then you have expert unnamed analysts and American unnamed experts making their comments. And I was like, all right, where's the picture? Usually if somebody shoots down a missile or shoots down an aircraft, 99% of the time there's pictures of wreckage. Where's the pictures? And then that was just yesterday, and today I read on like at the bottom of all this media feed, it was a mistake. The Ukrainian drone shot down, and Ukrainian self-defense shot down a Ukrainian drone. Anyways, the bottom line is this: it's all bullshit, all bullshit, all bullshit, all the time, and they're all actors. There's no question that the reason why Zelensky was chosen by the oligarchs to represent Ukraine is because he's an actor. All right, so it's just all bullshit, and you have to recognize it. Green screens galore, computer-generated CGI and all that, an army of people generating nonsensical facts and things for you to pay attention to, and this drumbeat of hatred and war towards Russia and China. Okay, I'm not going to talk too much about why that's going on. Just know that it is going on, right? Fair enough? Fair dinkum? Right? Nothing here that I'm saying should come at any surprise to any of you for any reason, right? Right? But what I want to talk about now is the fact that a lot of things that are going on is simply not reported on at all. You have to be able to read Russian. You have to be able to read Cyrillic. You have to be able to read Chinese. You have to be able to read Persian to be able to get through and find out what's going on in the world. So while American media might be able to give you a feel of what's going on in America, it does absolutely lousy job telling you what's going on in the rest of the world, because it simply doesn't. Simply doesn't. SpaceX had these satellites that the U.S. Space Command was directing the orbital paths of these satellites, and they tried ramming the Chinese space station. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Each time China made a formal complaint. When the third trajectory came up and it started heading straight for ramming the Chinese space station, China turned off all the guidance systems on SpaceX, and all those satellites, all hundreds, some of them, fell straight to the ground and burned up. The excuse was a freak geomagnetic storm. When the United States submarine rammed into a mountain, well, if you read the Chinese news, you'll find out that it was a sonic bomb that was put there by an AI-controlled robot. In great detail on how the ship was identified and found. The submarine skimming the bottom of the South China Sea. That was found and detonated. The F-35 that the pilot just suddenly, freak accident, he just ejected just after it was launched from a carrier. And that does happen from time to time, but they had to sail all these recovery vessels to recover the F-35, including a hospital ship. Well, hospital ships are for people, not for composite materials. So anyways, you get this idea, you get the drift. There's many things that are not being reported, like the tit for tat. Freak fire burns up the Chinese Type 075 VTOL carrier. 2 months later, freak fire guttons the Bahama Richard, America's largest VTOL carrier. Tit for tat. This stuff is not being reported, even though it says, yeah, there's a fire, blah, 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 blah. It's not being reported. People aren't putting the pieces together. And that goes for COVID. And I'm not going to talk too much about this. It's all historical stuff anyways. But the use of genetically modified insects is a war that's been ongoing for a long, long time. And it's just not reported in the West. But let's talk about some of the other stuff. Now, people are talking about the Hersh disclosure about the Nord Stream bombing. But people like me and everybody else, and I put it on the webpage, we just used spyglass. And we saw the planes that were in the air at the time of the detonations. They were American Navy planes. So you can go back and forth with all the speculation, back and forth, endlessly, back and forth, endlessly, back and forth. The reality is, all right, American planes were in the area. Nobody else was. Okay? Biden said he was going to blow them up. So, 2 + 2 = 4. What's your problem? But I'm going to talk about something else. Now, one of the things, we talk about the Beirut bombing, right? Big, massive explosion. Lots of cameras everywhere. The initial media reports, mainstream media, it was just a freak accident caused by heat causing a detonation of fertilizer. In reality, so many cameras were in the sky at the time that the missiles could clearly be seen. And while it looked like a nuclear detonation, and I said it was a nuclear detonation, it's very possible that it was thermobaric detonation with a initial missile hitting a very flammable target, and then a detonation missile. In any event, it was a very big explosion, bigger than a Moab, but smaller than a nuclear explosion. So that led a lot of people like myself to consider it might be a subnuclear munition detonation. We don't know. Nobody knows. But what we do know is it was an enormous detonation. And if it was done by multiple missiles and pre-planning of fertilizer, so be it. But it was an amazing detonation. Which brings me and segues up to this other discussion that I want to have right now. Now, when we think of nuclear weapons, we think in terms of Hiroshima or Nagasaki, huge, big city levelers. And because during the 50s into the 60s, big nuclear weapons was what were being developed. But we know that during the 1990s, the United States started working on micronuclear technology. Systems that would focus on burrowing deep underground and taking out facilities, or very, very strategic, localized, I call it strategic, tactical, localized systems, right? And so we know there's more than just simply these big city buster nukes. We also know that China, back in the 1970s, perfected enhanced radiation nukes. Now, China's nuke of preference doesn't destroy by blast, which is American nuclear technology, but rather they destroy by radiation. The thing about radiation is it goes through everything, but it dissipates quickly. So if you have an American nuke, it'll going to render the area uninhabitable for hundreds or thousands of years, if not millions of years. And China's nuke kills everything, and then it's back to normal after a couple of days. China's nukes were badmouthed back in the 70s because people were horrified that China created nuclear weapons that kills people but leaves buildings intact. And I'm not going to get into that crazy, stupid narrative. Things are destroyed by this. Particularly all electronics are fried slag. But there you have it. What I want to talk about here is our mind concept thinks that nuclear weapon use is only the big city flatteners, or detonating a nuke along a coast to create a tidal wave, or detonating a nuke along a fault line to create an earthquake, which apparently, and I personally believe, happened in Turkey. Biden told Turkey, you had better allow Sweden and Finland to enter NATO, or else there will be massive consequences. And then the very next day, 3 nuclear weapons were detonated on a fault line and caused 35,000 deaths, something ridiculous like that. And quietly, without any fanfare, Turkey allowed Sweden to join NATO. Not reported, was it? The United States is a big, massive, powerful country with all kinds of technologies that are not reported. And if you try to go ahead and mention these things, you will be scoffed at by organized and paid troll armies. So not only do you have to deal with the ignorant types, but you have to deal with paid disruptors. And so if you know something, you don't want to say it. For instance, China, after Trump came into office, about the time when John Bolton was trying to induce famine through biological weapons, China was hit with 2 freak back-to-back super typhoons. People are like, it's just, bad luck that all these plagues of insects are swarming all over China. It's just bad luck that drones are spraying viruses over pig farms. It's just bad luck that China is hit with these massive typhoons. But you know what? You know what happens to a kid that you constantly pick at school? He gets tougher.
搞错了，再来。
我只想做你的太阳，你的太阳，在你的心里呀，在你的心底呀，不管是多远的远方，不要害怕，我在身旁。
你额头的伤口，你的不同，你犯的错，都不必隐藏。你破旧的玩偶，你的面具，你的自我。他们说要带着光驯服每一头怪兽，
我想站的我能帮忙，你还不行。
他们说要缝好你的伤，没有人爱小丑。为何孤独不可光荣？人只有不完美值得歌颂。谁说污泥满身的不算英雄？爱你孤身走暗巷，爱你不跪的模样，爱你对峙过绝望，不肯哭一场，爱你破烂的衣裳，却敢堵命运的枪，爱你和我那么像，缺口都一样。去吗？黑吗？这褴褛的披风，战吗？战啊！你最卑微的梦，致那黑夜中的无言与怒吼。谁说站在光
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the Chinese national anthem.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name, we lift our eyes, tune our hearts to your beat. Where we walk, there you'll be, with fire in our eyes, our lives alight, your love untamed is blazing out. The streets will glow forever bright, your glory's breaking through the night. You will never fade away, your love is here to stay by my side.
China weathered out to this nonsense and is much tougher for it. And then when COVID hit, China was ready. Not saying what COVID was caused by. I'm just saying that China was ready for airborne viruses and handled it quite adroitly, don't you know? But talking more about the nuclear aspect, so we've got this mindset that war is an invasion force that's going to swim to an island and men are going to pour out of these landing crafts and be machine gunned down by defenders. We have this idea that war is going to be a pummeling of great, enormous nuclear cannons that'll flatten cities. We have this idea that America, isolated because it's protected by Canada and the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, that nobody can harm it. We have these preconceived notions that are unshakable. And I'm here to tell you, number one, that there are nuclear technologies in use that are micro to minor scale that causes great devastation, but not city busters. Number two, these nuclear weapons have been used. And I'm going to talk about the Kiev event here in just a second. And, point three I really want to make is questioning what's going on in the United States. Now, if you pay attention to the mainstream media, the United States is running guns. Unemployment is down. Everybody's got a job and they can't even find people to do the work. America is the best and the greatest with the toughest military and all that stuff. That's what you hear in the mainstream media day in and day out. So you think everything's fine and dandy. But the truth is If you take even a casual look at individual social media accounts, you see boarded up cities, small towns that are nearly vacant, big sprawling suburbs with nobody moving. You have drug addiction in the cities that look like zombies. You have failing infrastructure with rats falling down from the ceiling. And you've got leadership that, American leadership at all levels, that are self-centered, corrupt, and if they do have a brain, they don't know how to use it. They're just making one mistake after the other. You have a woke society that has permeated the United States, and raging inflation, and a geopolitical agenda that seems to be non-existent. Did I cover everything? I think that's about right. So the reality of what's going on in the United States is often misunderstood, and you can look at it in two ways. Let me have a sip of my coffee. The first way is that everything's fine and dandy. The second way is that the things you see is indication of something wrong. I tend to be in the second camp, that there is an indication of something seriously wrong in the United States right now. And of that, you can look at it in two ways. Either on one extreme, you can say it's a natural progression of the United States as a capitalist society. Democracy has failed, and all the ruin you see is a result of a mismanaged democracy that was allowed to go to decay. That's the first thing you can reach to that conclusion. A lot of people don't want to hear that. So what's the second conclusion? Somebody is engineering this kind of stuff. I don't believe so much in the engineering, but I can say that there might be contributors. The United States has made a lot of big enemies throughout the world, and there's a lot of people that would really like America and the West to get its comeuppance. I myself personally tend to believe that the United States is failing on its own merits, independent of anything else. And therefore, since it's failing on its own merits, it's up to the United States people, based upon the Constitution, to dust it off and start using it as it was intended, instead of letting these sociopaths and psychopaths run the nation into the ground while they run away in their Learjets with bales of money. That's my personal opinion. But let's get back to the subject. The subject is World War III. And looking upon this possibility that World War III is not being fought in a traditional sense, you're not seeing landing crafts go up to an island D-Day style. You're not seeing carpet bombing of cities, World War II style. You're not seeing nuclear Armageddon as was so popularized during the 1960s and 1970s. Instead, you're seeing what I would like to consider a stealth war on all fronts. A stealth war on all fronts. When the United States decided to start blaming China for all of its ills and decides to maintain its homogeny in the world, China took notice. And China has been playing this tit-for-tat game. You do one thing, China does another thing. But I am of the mind and of the belief that China thinks long-term. They saw this coming 10, 20 years ago and have laid down the foundation so that they can handle things very adroitly, and that's what you're seeing. So while the news media is painting this artificial reality build-up to World War III. The actual reality is that the war has been going on since 2008, and various public issues have manifested since 2014, with an acceleration of hostilities culminating when John Bolton under Donald Trump started laying a hidden war against China in various aspects. And now with him gone, we have Biden, who is just a neocon Democrat war hawk that is just marching the United States towards war. And everybody's watching this. That's what it looks like on the surface. But looking outside of the box and in the world and peering underneath, you lift up the carpet and look underneath, I see a bunch of things that are in place. And the collapse of the United States that you are witnessing right now are just the manifestations of a completely rotten bedrock. The bedrock is not there anymore. It's all undercut. It's all destroyed. Now, you'll have various public personalities come on out, get in front of their green screen, and you'll have the impression that they've got crowds of adoring and cheering people. Consider the fiasco with the UK. And so you had this brief, I'll call her a president, Liz, just call her a president for a brief period of time in charge of the UK. And then there was a series of underreported events, and before you know it, she is just out. Indications are that these under or not reported events consists of nuclear detonation, 1 or 2, and destruction of a number of submarines, and some special operations that failed, and the horrified leadership in the UK says we got to get her out because we want to play America's game, but we don't want to die in the process. And so she's out. The UK is trying to play along with the United States and be the aggressive war hawk, but not to the point where the UK is going to be wiped off the face of the map. Right? I suppose you all can parse the various details. I'm not going to do that. That's not my point. The point in this little discussion here is to say World War III is in process. I said in an earlier video that there was a climactic event that happened in early May of 2023 that has changed the dynamics here on out. It's unreported or perhaps underreported, and in combination of other things acting in a synergetic way has created a situation for a rapid decline in the overall power of the West. A rapid decline, a negatively exponential decline of the power base in the United States and in the collective West being American proxy nations. As time moves on, with each week, the United States and the West gets progressively weaker in every element. When historians look back on this time, they may point out the visible and the reported elements. But I'm here to tell you that in this war, it's wholly underreported, if not completely hidden. Oh, there's wars going on. There's fighting going on. There's all kinds of things going on. It's just that you are not aware of them. And so, with that being said, it is very, very important for you to know your role and what's going on, how to handle what's going on, and to avoid getting caught up in problems. So let's just talk for a minute here. I'm of the opinion that we have been at war since 2008. The visible portion, which is a act, it's Hollywood, happened in 2014. The culmination of this began on CNY of 2019 and was a loss, a failure. There's been other issues regarding Ukraine and this and that, and China and provocations and all kinds of stuff. But make no mistake, what you're witnessing is a Hollywood production. The real war climax, we're at it. The peak point was in May 2023, and while we're going to have a couple more years of watching Hollywood go through its death throes and making all kinds of horrible and frightening things, the truth of the matter is war is on the wane. It's just that the American public and the global public are not aware of it yet, and it's on the wane, meaning that a new world is emerging. It's a powerful world that's emerging, and it's best that if you prepare and keep your wits mind, you will survive and prosper in the new world that is emerging. Prosper. So, a couple of points here. I've said it over and over again. Control your thoughts. Take care of your body. Eat well. Be fiscally prudent. Opt for things such as bicycles to go here and there. Be part of your community. Volunteer. Be aware of your community. Remember, you can't control the world, but you can control your little part of it, so do that. I see a bright future. I'm an optimistic person, but even at the scariest moments of the night, there's always something good. And most of what you're seeing Hollywood production right now is a horror movie. The few elements that aren't horror movies are just terribly done. The producers need to be fired. And do well. Do well to each other. Do your affirmation campaigns. Mine will be ending up this month for my current campaign. And it's segueing into a very busy period in my life. That's okay. Busy is good. And I'm going to have to tone down the frequency of and videos and stuff down to accommodate other aspects of a very evolving life. And that's a good thing too. Doesn't mean I'm getting rid of it. Just means it's changing. That's fine too, right? Change. Be the best you can be. And remember, people, I believe in you. I really do. Take care. Bye-bye.
I'm making my way, oh, I'm making my way.